I love therapy, and in fact, I've been going to therapy since I was around 6 years old. Though I talk about therapy a lot and may interview some therapists on the show on occasion, nothing that is said in this podcast should be considered a replacement for therapy. If you are struggling, I urge you to please seek guidance from a therapist because you are absolutely worth it. Everyone, you are listening to Wine, Dine, and 69, a podcast about dating, relationships, sex, and self-love. I am your host, Rachel Dalton, and I am sitting in my childhood bedroom in Michigan, which has been converted into my mom's office. So it's been interesting. I recorded it a little bit earlier in here today, actually the episode that you're going to hear today. And yeah, I don't know. It's a weird mixture of feeling comfortable, but also, I don't know, out of place in a weird way. It's kind of bizarre, but I hope everybody's doing well. I hope everybody had a good holiday, whatever you celebrate. I have been spending a lot of downtime with my family, which has been extremely nice, especially since things are really going to ramp up once I get back to Philly. I'm leaving tomorrow. So I have a lot to talk about today. A lot of it is kind of just little snippets of things here and there. So there's not really going to be a overwhelming article that we're going to discuss here or anything like that. It's just kind of going to be a mishmash of a bunch of different things. So I guess with that being said, I am going to shamelessly hop into some self-promotion. First up, I was interviewed on the Love Machine podcast with James Priest. He is a phenomenal dating coach in the UK. We had a great conversation about a ton of things. The episode is called Naked Attraction, so we talked about the television show. As listeners know, it is one of my favorites. We also talked about demisexuality and what constitutes attraction, especially for somebody who is demisexual. We talked about dating profiles and how you can show your best self there. We covered a lot of things in just 35 minutes, so definitely check it out. I'll put a link to it in the episode notes. I hope to be guesting on more podcasts in the future. It's actually one of my goals for 2023, which kind of goes seamlessly into the next topic that I wanted to talk about, which is New Year's resolutions. I know that so many New Year's resolutions can be centered around body image. And hey, you know what? I encourage everybody to take care of themselves. I mean, that's what this podcast is about, right? Self-care, being sure to take care of yourself, and self-improvement. But, along with that, I would urge people to be less focused, if that is, one of your New Year's resolutions, wow, to be more focused on how you feel internally and keeping your body healthy rather than just being focused on how the physical looks, because it really is holistic. And I'm going to be learning a lot about that this year because it kind of ties into one of my resolutions. So in the past, I've done lists of things that I wanted to do in a year, but I found that overwhelming and not particularly helpful. So in the past few years, I've kind of developed words. Back in 2020, the word was movement. Back in 2021, the word was movement. In 2022, I had 3 words, and they were momentum, continuation of movement, and balance and hustle. And I am really happy with how that worked for me this year. I made a lot of progress, both in my career field and in my emotional life. And I decided to do a similar thing this year. So I have 3 words this year, and I'm going to be, kind of have a loose idea of different things that I want to tackle in the categories of each of these words. Because things change, things aren't fixed. It's one of the many things that my guest and I discuss in this episode. But my words for 2023 are intention, health, and values. I want to be more intentional with how I spend my time with the people that I allow into my life. In terms of health, I want to, I'm 32 years old, going to be 33 in 2023, and I want to take better care of my body, not necessarily to look a certain way, but because I'm getting older and, I'm not really a person who works out or exercises, and I need to get better at that. So that's something that I want to do. I also want to be more cognizant of the food that I'm ingesting, what I'm putting into my body, drinking less alcohol, which is something I already started doing in 2022. So health is the second portion, intention, health, and then values. As I talked about, I think in last week's episode, and as we talk about a little bit in my conversation today, values has been something that's really important to me. And so I want to continue exploring my values and making sure that I am waking up and living with my values day to day, and that the people that I'm inviting into my life have values that I admire or that I share. So those are kind of my resolutions, and I'm curious to know what yours might be. What do you think of resolutions? Is it something that you don't do? Is it something that, like me, you revisit later in the year, maybe around your birthday? Or is it something that, do you do something like me where you do words? What are some of the goals that you have this year? What are some things that you are looking forward to? What are some things that you're excited about? We are still in a pandemic. I know it's hard to believe, but we are. But it does seem like, the world is starting to adjust a little bit. So as we are starting to kind of not open back up, but bloom, I guess we should say, re-emerge. As we are starting to do that, what are some things that you are looking forward to? What are some things that you want to accomplish? You can go ahead and DM me on Instagram or the Facebook page, or email me at winedine@allportsopen.com. One of the things that I am the most excited for 2023 is the show that I am in. And this is something we're going to hit the ground running as soon as I get back next week. We're going to jump right into tech and dress rehearsals, and I'm super excited for that. It's a fantastic group of people. I really like everyone, and I find that when I've been in, cast before, there's always been, a little bit of drama here. Theater people, it comes with the territory, or whatever. But this is just really a delightful group of people that I really enjoy spending time with. And I am looking forward to being on stage with them, being able to go out for drinks with them afterwards, and just generally enjoying spending time with them. I like them so much that a number of them may actually end up being on the podcast as future storyteller guests, which again seamlessly blends into introducing my guest and talking a little bit about that today. My guest today is Sam. She is with me in the show. We both play different roles. I play Jane Bingley, I guess, in this, and she plays Lizzie Darcy, formerly Bennet. Those married names are weird. But when we met, we kind of instantly clicked, like kind of the first time that we had a conversation, and realized that we have a fuck ton in common, starting with the fact that we share a zodiac sign, and really only taking off from there. We even live kind of in the same area. So we have a fantastic conversation here, and I'm really grateful for Sam's vulnerability and willingness to talk about the nitty-gritty things. It's not always the easiest. And again, I was, just again surprised by how much our stories and our experiences kind of align. It's always kind of kismet when something like that happens. It also kind of introduces what I sort of wanted to do with the podcast from the beginning. I wanted to do a mix of storyteller and expert guests. And I had this idea in the beginning that the storyteller guest for the month would go along the topic of the expert guest for the month. And, it's hard to do that. It's hard to plan that much in advance. But this is, I think, the first month that it is actually happening, right at the end of 2022 and about 2.5 years into the podcast. The last episode was with Jenny Rochelle, where we talked about betrayal and how to overcome betrayal to become a better person. And we explored topics of resilience and getting back up when you feel like you can't. And that's something that Sam and I explore in this conversation. What does it mean to be resilient? And what does it mean when you are a person who puts a lot of effort into your relationships, particularly your romantic relationships? And when those end, how do you recover from that when you've put so much into them? Self-care and self-love, listening to yourself. These are all things that we talk about. And yes, we also talk about New Year's resolutions. And you know what? Through talking with her, I also realized some things that were important for me to recognize in myself, which is I really like the fact that I'm a reflective person. I like that I'm an introspective person. I used to beat myself up about the fact that I was so reflective and that I was always trying to figure out why A and B created C and always thinking that there was an answer to everything. And, talking to Sam and just realizing that she has faced similar things, realizing that it's okay to be reflective. And in fact, being reflective is a superpower. There are a ton of people out there who would rather avoid than to reflect, and they keep repeating the same mistake over and over again because they don't take the time to try to learn from it. I don't know. There are just a lot of things that Sam and I talked about that made me go, oh yeah, I really like that about her. Oh, I'm like that too. I guess I like that about myself as well. So yeah, we had a absolutely wonderful conversation. Really, it was a continuation of a conversation that we had at a bar a week ago. But yes, you should, as we say a few times in the conversation, if you're in the Philly area, come see Miss Bennet Christmas at Pemberley at Old Academy Players. You will see us on stage. Come say hi. And other than that, again, let me know your New Year's resolutions. I want to know what you're looking forward to and what you're hoping to tackle. Because, as I say in the episode, it is important to reflect, but it is also important to look forward. So with all of that in mind, I'm going to cut to a quick commercial break, and then please enjoy my conversation with Sam.
Calling all citizens of Halcyon City. The newest generation of heroes are now painting the pages of Delinquent Comics, an actual play podcast in the game world of Masks, a new generation. Join our heroes as they struggle to build a team and save the city. Can Titan escape the shadow of his mentor burnout? Is Soul's overwhelming power too dangerous to control? Will Muse discover her past? And how does White Knight's stomach all those strange snacks? Listen to Delinquent Comics to find out at allportsopen.com, Spotify, iTunes, or wherever podcasts are found. New issues become available to all citizens every other Monday.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I am super excited to introduce you to my guest today, Samantha. Sam, you're going to have to let me know which one you want to go by because I call you Sam, but
Sam is fine.
Okay. This is Sam, a new friend of mine. We've been hanging out recently. We're in a show together. Miss Bennet Christmas at Pemberley. You should come see it if you're in the Philadelphia area. But yeah, I am super excited to talk to you today. We've talked a lot just, at the bar or in between scenes at rehearsal, just about the many things that we have in common, and have gotten really philosophical in some of our conversations. So I thought that you'd be a great guest to have on, especially for the last episode of the year. So with that, go ahead and tell the listeners a little bit about who you are, what your overall story is, and then we'll kind of jump into the nitty-gritty of it.
All right. Awesome. I guess I should start off by saying I feel very honored to be the last guest of the year. That's exciting. But yeah, so I am, I'm a lot of things. This was the question that I asked you beforehand, like, how am I supposed to answer this? So I am an actress and a teacher. I currently teach middle school English. So that's a whole podcast in and of itself. And I'm somebody who just really values human connection, and that kind of extends to whether we're talking about me on stage or me in my classroom or really me with my relationships. And it's something that, relationships are extremely important to me, and especially romantic relationships. And that's something that has been good at times in my life. And sometimes I think that, I've put a little bit too much pressure and a little bit too much value on things that I probably necessarily shouldn't have. So it's been touch and go on whether that's a positive thing in in my life or not.
Depends on how it's going at the time, I suppose.
Yes. You know, it's if it's going well, and if it's in a relationship where, you know, both people are putting a lot of work into it, then that's fantastic. And that's how you make things work. But then, you know, if it kind of becomes one-sided, which it definitely has been at times for me, then it goes really badly for everybody eventually.
Yeah. It's not going to do any good for anybody if one person is putting if one person's putting in 90 and the other person's putting in 10.
Yes.
Because the person putting in 10 isn't learning anything.
Exactly. And that's something that I have really dealt with, especially with kind of my last relationship that I know we're going to talk about in a little bit, where in the past I have been too eager to compromise to the point where the other person doesn't have to compromise anything they're doing. And then eventually, by the time I get comfortable enough in the relationship to ask for what I need, that power dynamic of the one person kind of having everything they want is already there and it's already established. And then the fact that I'm asking for anything seems like absolutely insane request.
Yeah, I am horrified by how much I relate to that. It's also worth mentioning that we realize that we're both Tauri.
Yes.
We are the
Taurians.
same sign. And I do think that is a common thing with Taurians, is that they have a tendency to just be so willing to work that working hard becomes overcompromising, which can lead to a betrayal of self.
Yeah. And just that statement, betrayal of self is something that really resonates with me. Unfortunately, and I hate that it resonates with me. But that's what happens when you kind of overcommit to making something work, maybe when it shouldn't, maybe when the other person isn't willing to put in work to make it work. I've done that many times where I lose myself in the process because I'm so wanting to be what people want me to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I
comes
don't
along
like
with
that.
a little bit of people-pleasing tendencies too.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a lot of people-pleasing tendencies. And that's something that, I don't think I really realized for the longest time that I do have as many people-pleasing tendencies as I do, because I really want to, believe that, I'm one of these cool girls that doesn't give a shit about anything. But the problem is that I give way too many shits about, way too many things that I shouldn't give shits about. So I should have asked you if it was okay to curse before we came on.
No, the show's called Wine Dine 69. It's totally
I
okay.
figured, yeah. I made an inference. So yeah.
No, totally okay. But no, I again relate to that so hard. This idea that I've talked with my therapist a lot about this idea that exactly what you just said, that in my last relationship, I guess I got an idea that he was a little bit of a playboy and a little bit of a commitment phobe.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was obsessed with this idea of being well, that's not a big deal. I don't need commitment. I don't need. And then when I asked for it, even though he had asked for it drunkenly a couple of times but didn't remember, he was horrified that I would ask something of him.
Right.
And it was dude, you've drunken, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But it got to the point where it was the same exact thing where I was willing to compromise, and I was like, Rachel, is this going to matter, 2 years from now? No, it's not. Then we're not going to bring it up. But then eventually so many things didn't get brought up and didn't get brought up and didn't get brought up and didn't get brought up. And so I told my therapist this yesterday. I was like, it was a great relationship. Well, it was good, but it was good because I wasn't asking for anything.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
So you and I are both in new relationships now.
Yes.
What are you doing differently? Asking for a friend.
Not dating American men. I'm kidding.
Same.
Just another funny coincidence about us. No, not intentionally not dating American men.
Right.
But
It just kind of happened that way.
It is a funny coincidence there. But I think that I have been so much more intentional about, asking for what I want and letting him know when, he does something that bothers me, and, telling him if I don't want to do something or don't want to go somewhere or whatever, instead of just trying to people please, because that did not get me anywhere.
Right. Right.
That ended very badly for everyone involved. And, so that's something that from the start, I, really, ever since my last big relationship ended, I knew that I had to change that. I didn't think it would necessarily be super easy to just, start telling people what I want, because that's just not exactly something that people pleasers can naturally do all the time.
Especially after like 30 plus years of doing that,
Yes, of the same patterns, and it's hard to break it. But that was something that, was glaringly obvious that I needed to change in my next relationship. Was that, just trying to keep the peace, trying to be that reason why everything went well, because that's not life. And it's not fair. It's not fair for one person to be, kind of getting the bum end of the deal all the time because they're the one giving up everything that they wanted. So the other person can be happy, so that they as a couple can be happy. Like it's an awful pattern to get into. And I think it's very easy when you're somebody who really just wants to make other people happy.
Yeah. And I mean, I found that avoiding confrontation, is that something you've dealt with?
Yes.
Okay.
So much. Yeah.
This idea that like, oh, I don't want to rock the boat, I just want everybody to get along, comes along with it as well. So being comfortable, learning to be comfortable with confrontation has been something that has been a learning process as well, as part of that people pleasing.
Yes. That's very hard for me still.
Definitely. Yeah. It's scary. I mean, conflict is difficult, but the fact of the matter, and the thing that I've learned is that, I had a bunch of friendships when I was a kid that it felt like if we got into a disagreement, it was end of friendship.
Yes.
And I guess that I guess all kids have had that experience, but I've carried that with me into a lot of my relationships. And so it's been this process of, okay, Rachel, just because we have a disagreement, that doesn't mean that this is the end. It means that if you have somebody who shares the same values of direct communication as you, then you're going to talk through it and you'll probably become stronger as a result.
Right. Exactly. And I completely relate to that idea of, kind of being scared that any little disagreement or whatever is going to be the end of a relationship. And it's like, how strong do I think my relationships are if I think that, one simple agreement is going to be the end? Like that's not good.
Exactly. Things that last because people communicate. And if you don't communicate those little like micro disagreements, then when the big ones come back, you're not going to be in practice, right?
Exactly.
So, but let's get into it. You have a pretty crazy story about how your last relationship kind of unfolded. I remember we were in rehearsal and I made it was like in the beginning of rehearsal, so like we barely talked, but I made some offhand comment to you about something dumb that my ex was doing. And you were like, oh, I have a kind of a similar story to that. And then you told me and I was shocked, could like barely pull my jaw off the floor. So this is your opportunity to like shit talk, I guess, really. But then after you do the shit talking, I do want to hear what you learned from the experience.
Sure. And, it is interesting just you retelling that story. I have learned, well, just to rewind briefly, I used to be somebody who very much didn't tell anybody any kind of issues they were going through. Like I was very much raised in like the household where it's like you don't air your dirty laundry, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so like I kind of carried this for a long time where it's like, okay, you don't share the bad things that have happened, you don't do that. And so now I feel like I've gone so far on the other end of it that now people like you who had known me for like a day at that point have these stories of me just casually trauma dumping this like enormous amount of stuff. And like I do it now to the point where like I don't realize how bad some things sound that I say sometimes until I look at the eyes around me after I've said it and like, oh, I'm sorry, I just made it uncomfortable.
I do the same thing. I'll trauma dump on my Uber driver sometimes.
Yes.
I'll just like get into the car and they'll be like, you look whatever, and I'll be like, dude, you'll never guess what just happened. But the thing is, that's the beauty of being a storyteller, right? Like, and this is what my friends tell me. Yes, I have a tendency to trauma dump, but if you can make the story entertaining, people don't mind as much.
That's true. That's a very, very good point.
So
yeah, as long as it's not like, as long as it's got that little bit of something special in there. Yeah.
You have to be able to like laugh at yourself and at the circumstances that you found yourself, because it's so at some point, like the story that you're about to tell us, it's so ridiculous.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It is fairly ridiculous. So okay. So the last relationship, last serious relationship that ended, of mine, we were together for about 3 years, and we were supposed to be married in July of last year, and then about 2 months before the wedding, he woke me up from a nap to tell me that he could not get married. Which, I feel like the nap is really what adds insult to injury on that, because it's like, I was really just having a moment's peace, And then it's like, so that's just really, I was raised on like, Sleeping Beauty and stuff. That's the opposite of Sleeping Beauty.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. That's so true. Getting woken up with a kiss, getting woken up with, oh my God. Ugh.
Getting woken up with essentially, please get out of my house,
Oh my God.
I didn't say it that way, but I mean,
Yeah.
The message, that's how I took it. So yeah. And, it was interesting because this was a situation where this man was older than me by about 10 years. And when we started dating, he was 40. And I was the first serious relationship that he had.
I think that we spoke about the fact that is a red flag.
Yes.
Like, I mean, we unlocked this secret key, but my ex was almost 30 when we met. And I'm just like, yeah, if you're like close to 30 and you've never had a serious relationship, that means that you don't have the tools.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think in addition to not having those tools that you need, a lot of what I saw in my ex was like, he was comfortable with his life,
Mm-hmm.
He was so comfortable with his life and his routines that there wasn't room for me.
Mm.
There wasn't a space for me. And looking back now, like I can totally see a lot better, hindsight is 2020.
Of course. Literally 2020.
Literally. No, but anyway. It's like, no, not 2020. Looking back now, I can see where the only way that he could comfortably have me in his life was if I just completely fit into his life that he had been living, that he had established, and that I just didn't ask to change anything.
I literally am like, I can't. You're just continue.
Yeah, I mean, it was just this matter of, he was so set in his ways, and he liked being set in those ways, and it just wasn't like, I told myself, okay, well, since I'm willing to make some compromises for him, he will be willing to make some compromises for me. And that was not true.
And for somebody who, like you said, somebody who is so willing to be like, okay, well, I can compromise. I just, it's like it only was going to work if you were going to allow yourself to fit into the small piece. And because you're who you are willing to try to fit into that small piece, mm-hmm. that small place. But the moment that I asked for anything else, asked for any stretching out of that comfort zone, he freaked the fuck out.
Yeah. And that's exactly what happened. In the months, leading up to the wedding, we talked a lot about, I talked a lot about, this idea of moving somewhere that could be ours instead of the place that he lived, and specifically like somewhere that was a little bit closer to where my friends and my community and everything was, because of course we were at his house, we were in his community, we were with his friends, we were with his family. It was all him. And so as I kind of was trying to make sure, okay, like this is going to happen, right? Because of course he did tell me in the beginning that yes, we would compromise. We would find a place in the middle. And I want to believe that he meant that at the time. I don't think he's a bad person.
Right.
I think he just was very comfortable with the way things were, and I wasn't enough to change that for him, and
it's quite possible that doesn't reflect anything on you. It's just that, like, and quite possibly nothing would be enough. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like the thing that's enough, quote unquote, is somebody who comes into his life and is able to do that.
Sure. Yeah.
Or is that automatically, which is like, what do you want, a fucking unicorn? Like, right. You're just looking for somebody to just take up such a little amount of space.
Yeah.
But it sounds like he's not a bad person, but
mm-hmm.
perhaps he lacked the introspection to be able. It's like this idea that like, it's okay that you weren't compatible. It's okay that it didn't work out, but couldn't he have been introspective enough to figure out that it wasn't going to work for him a little bit earlier, before there was a ring, before there was a wedding? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And that's the thing that really killed me sometimes. And I can remember, going to him sometimes with scenarios and being like, how would you feel if we were in my house, if we only saw my friends and my family, if we weren't near the things that you want to do and your interests and, the things that make you
mm-hmm.
happy in this world, how would you feel? And I remember him being like, I would feel terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay.
Empathy.
Right? But he was only able to hold on to that empathy, it seemed, while I was placing it right in front of his eyeballs. And as soon as I was done, it was gone. And that's sort of like, circling back to how you kind of related this to what happened with your relationship too. As we were talking more, as I was talking more, leading up to the wedding about these sorts of things, because of course I was worried that he was, not going to compromise. I was starting to get worried about that. So I was talking to him more about that. And, when he, woke me up with true love's kiss, I mean, get the fuck out of my house, bitch. I remember he told me, you're not happy. You're not happy.
And whose fault is that? I mean, no.
Yeah.
No. I mean, well, no. But like, it's like, nuanced.
Right. It's like, I've been trying to be happy. I've been telling you what I need to be happy, and trying to make it as fair as humanly possible so that we both can be happy. But you wouldn't do anything.
You won't compromise.
No.
Yeah.
And so it was the strangest thing, because it almost felt like it was, putting it on me at the end. Just like I'm letting you go because you're not happy.
Oh, please.
Like I'm like, that's kind of the way it felt. It kind of felt like this, like I'm being selfless right now and setting you free because you're not happy. And it's like, no, you just decided that you would rather live your life the exact way that you have been living it, than change at all to have a life with another person.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that, right, it is, backtrack a little bit, like my joke, it is every individual's job to be happy. Like that is your sole responsibility as an individual. It is my sole responsibility as an individual.
Agreed.
But the people that we surround ourselves with do have an impact on how happy we are, if we are happy. If there are people who are hurting us, if there are people who are betraying us or being disloyal to us, then we're not going to feel as happy. And so we are ultimately responsible for our own happiness and how we react to those things. But particularly a significant other, who you are living with and sharing a space with, I hesitate to say that they have a share in that responsibility, but they're more impactful than anybody else.
Yes.
And if your significant other is, I'll put it on me, right? If my significant other is unhappy, I feel like it is my responsibility to try to make them happier. And I want to do that because I care about them.
Well, yeah. And certainly if it's something where it is in your control,
Exactly.
It's not like it's not like I was unhappy because I never became, a Broadway, star and that's why I was unhappy. And it's like, well, what the fuck am I supposed to do about that? But it's like, when I'm unhappy because our life that we're trying to build together is all about you.
Mm-hmm.
That's an issue.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll never forget. We never did figure out our wedding song, which
okay.
I think is probably, a blessing in disguise, because at least that's like one thing that's not...
You don't have a song out there that's going to come on the radio and you're automatically going to fly into a rage.
Yeah, exactly. We never figured it out. Because well, we had, pretty different music tastes to begin with, which is fine. But he did exactly what you would think he would do with the song. He kept suggesting songs that he loved.
Mm-hmm.
That had nothing to do with me.
And nothing to do with the relationship.
Nothing to do with the relationship. I still remember we were sitting around with his family, like the summer before the wedding was supposed to be. So like a whole year before, everything was supposed to take place. And, I loved his family, and that's something that I honestly think has probably been the hardest part for me.
The biggest loss. Yeah.
Yeah. Because, my father died when I was little, and, my family is a little bit fractured because of that. And, but you know, he had a family that was very close, and you know, they loved me and I loved them, and it hurts. That part fucking hurts.
Yeah.
But I remember we were sitting around and talking about the wedding song, like, because I was like, yeah, we don't know what the wedding song is going to be yet. And I can't even, thinking about it just makes me, yeah. Sorry.
Oh my gosh.
He suggested Summer Breeze by, who is it? Is it like Hall & Oates or Steely Dan? Is that it?
I have no idea.
Okay. one of those bands that, or like a similar one, I forget. That was his favorite song. He knew very well that I did not even like that genre of music. It's like yacht rock, right?
Oh boy. Okay.
Yeah. So like, I didn't like it at all. Didn't like the entire genre of music. Didn't bitch about it because he liked it. So, you know, we listened to it on repeat all the damn time.
No musical theater for you in that household.
No,
huh?
no musical theater for you. There was one day we were in the car and I put on like One Day More from Les Mis and was like singing every part, and he just looked at me like, he's like, you need to be committed somewhere. But
like, this is what you're signing up for. No.
He looked at me
beautiful.
like that a lot. He looked at me like that a lot, honestly. He, for somebody who values, you know, being silly as much as I do, he just, yeah, he did not at all. I'm not entirely sure how much he liked me when I like really look at it. But anyway, moving on. So he suggested this song that he knew I didn't like. He knew I didn't like the entire genre of music. And I remember his own brother saying to him, like, this has to be something that's important to Sam too, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And like, he didn't get it.
Oh God, it's his own brother.
His own brother understood it. And I don't know.
Yeah. It kind of encapsulates the whole thing right there, doesn't it?
Yeah. It was just, to him, that was the perfect song because it was something about, because it was his favorite song, and it was something about, I think there's a line about July night or something, and you know, it would have been July, it would have been night, whatever.
So that's his. So
that's perfect to him, and that's right. All. And it didn't matter that I didn't like it. It didn't matter that it wasn't important to me. It wasn't important to us. And it's like, wow. That should have been so much more telling to me than it was.
It's funny, those moments that like pop up and you're just like, man, like that. Okay. I wish I had seen that for what it is. But again, like I was just talking to like a friend about this. I was like, you know, if like you can miss so many red flags, and it makes you wonder like what red flags you're missing now in potential friendships or in potential partners or in like, you know, relationship, like what red flags are you missing now and everybody around you? And she was just like, Rachel, you know, you're going to kill yourself if you go looking for those. You have to accept that some flags are only going to come in hindsight.
Yeah, because that fear is very real, right? It's like if I put up with this for so long, or if I miss this for so long, like what else am I missing? What else am I putting up with that I shouldn't be, right? And it also just reminds me of like this stupid meme or something that I saw a while ago that was like, yes, I saw the red flags. I thought it was a circus. So,
exactly.
That's apparently, you know, the name of my autobiography. I don't know.
Oh my gosh, your memoir. Yeah, I like the one that's from BoJack Horseman. It's a little sadder, but it's like, of course you didn't see the red flags. When you're wearing rose-colored glasses, all the flags look pink.
Yeah.
Like it's like, yeah, like when you believe, as it seems like both of us do, when you believe in like the best of people, and you believe that people are as committed to things as you are, and you believe that people, you know, without necessarily talking to them, you know, have those same values and have those same, it's just so many people operate differently than we do. And that's been, I mean, a huge lesson for me in 2022 is just like, not everybody thinks the same way as you. Not everybody values the things that you do.
Yeah.
That doesn't make them bad people. It just, you know, makes it different. And yeah, maybe it's going to hurt a little bit because you are so introspective and you are such a reflective person of depth, so
Yeah.
I think that's difficult too. Well,
Yeah.
how did that kind of all fall out? Like after that happened, what happened with you, and how did you kind of what did that process of bouncing back and beginning to date come from? Like how did your resilience kind of take form after that?
I had a couple months left to finish teaching for the year,
Okay.
where like because this was in another state, so I couldn't just sort of run away immediately. But I did. But I did run away immediately because I just couldn't. I couldn't look at him. I couldn't, be in
Yeah.
that house. I just so I went and lived with a coworker of mine who was extremely gracious to, allow me into her life for a couple months. And I finished out the school year there. And in the meantime, started looking. I started looking at houses in back in Philadelphia, where
In the area where we kind of both live now.
yeah, yeah, and I initially was looking at apartments and just to rent, and I quickly found out that I have a lot of pets, and I have a lot of stuff, and just for any place that was going to be large enough that was going to not charge me like hundreds of dollars a month in pet fees, I was looking at about the same price as a mortgage. So
Why not? Yeah.
yeah, so I within about 6 weeks, I want to say, of the fateful nap.
Yeah, I bet naps are tricky for you now.
Naps are like hashtag trauma now.
Yeah,
I
I
know. But within about 6 weeks of that nap, I was under contract for a house that I was buying on my own. I and I had a new job in Philadelphia. So I really just sort of went into overdrive where I wasn't doing, anything aside from just rebuilding my entire life from the ground up, because at that point, I was in a place that was all his. I was in a house that was all his. I was in a job I had gotten so I could be close to him. And so I burned it to the ground and I started new.
Everything, it sounds like. I
Yeah.
mean, I did a similar thing. It was, all right, I got a new job. I got a new apartment, all of these. It's almost like if everything reminds you of the old life, why not just, like you said, burn it all down and just
Yeah.
be a phoenix rising from the ashes?
Yeah. Yeah. And, I started dating fairly soon after that too, possibly a little bit too soon, but I think that, for better or for worse, relationships are really important to me.
Yeah.
And
You had that energy. You
yeah,
had that love
yeah,
it didn't have anywhere to go anymore.
right, exactly. And, I still held out hope that something, would be better, that something would be a fit that would work, that someone was out there that would be willing to work with me just like I am willing to work with them. Um, so yeah, I think that sort of the hope, of a better future, helped me to maintain my resilience. But then I think probably a larger part is just like my sheer stubbornness of will that
Taurus. Yeah.
rears up. Yeah, yeah. I mean, really, just like textbook as far as as far as that goes. Like that comes up when I'm when I feel rejected, which is interesting because I will self-sabotage all day long, right? But in situations where I feel rejected, I kind of refuse to let someone get the better of me.
Mm.
It's like, that's my job, um, so something about like the self-preservation thing of whether it's my ego or whatever it is just so called into action so that I can make sure that person knows that he did not break me, even though
Yeah.
to me sometimes it feels like he did, right?
Right. Well, the best revenge, they say, is living a happy life.
Right.
That's the best thing that you can do.
Right.
And it sounds like, I mean, you're doing that. Like, that was my Midwest coming out. That's what I get for being in Michigan in my childhood bedroom. It all comes back.
I mean, that's
but yeah, you are in a new, relationship. You have a new job. You have, pets who love you. You're in a show. Like, all these. It's like, and I know we were talking about this at the bar, like I guess it was last week.
Yeah.
But it's hard to give yourself the credit for how far you've come when you're in it.
Yes.
But I find that, like, and I mean, especially now, like, towards the end of the year, it's easier. I was just writing like a reflective, like, journal entry that I'll probably turn into a post on Instagram. It's a lot easier to take stock of the progress that you've made when you're looking backward in that way. And
Yeah.
I think it's difficult too. We kind of talked about this as well. And I guess I kind of want to shift into this part of the conversation, that being people who are so willing to compromise, I don't know if that comes from having a very strong idea of what you want and just wanting that so badly that you're willing to compromise in whatever way to get it. But, we've talked about this idea that you never really truly figure life out. I know that when I was younger, I was just like, oh, like you like hit a certain age and like it all falls into place, and you get married and you have kids and you do all of those things. And it wasn't until, my, I'm going to go real dark here for a second. It wasn't until I watched my uncle, who was in his 40s, struggling with alcoholism, that I was just like, oh, there's no magic time that it is your job to figure it out and to make a happy life. There is no magic number that you hit. Side note, he ended up dying at age 50 of alcoholism just back in 2017.
Wow.
But thank you. But I mean, that, for better or for worse, it was a lesson for me that I really need to take control of my own destiny. It doesn't mean, the idea that figuring out doesn't mean, that everything falls into place, because good things are always going to happen and bad things are always going to happen. Life is incredibly cyclical in that way. Yeah. But with all of that in mind, how have your wants, needs, desires, all of these things, how have they shifted over time? And what are your thoughts on that whole idea that you're always a work in progress? And what do you take away from that?
Yeah, I feel like I kind of had a bit of a revelation when we were talking about this last week, because I have felt this enormous amount of stress for most of my adult life to figure out everything, to figure out, relationships so that I can have a family, like that, having kids has always been really important to me. And, I've always thought, okay, like it has to be just, I have to be in this perfect relationship or whatever in order to, to make this happen, to have a kid. So I need to work with everything. So I need to figure this out. I need to figure that out. And it's just like, yeah, when we just talked about like, what if there is no actual figuring it out? What if it's just, some days are crappy and other days are awesome? And what if we just have to accept that? What if we just have to accept that there is no figuring it out? What if the concept of figuring it out is just another one of these, ruminative thoughts that bounce around in my skull so much as, somebody with super bad anxiety,
Sure.
What if it's just, what I still remember actually, years ago, I used to work at this adorable little shop in Chestnut Hill. It's unfortunately no longer there. It was called the Paperia. that I worked with this woman once in a while who was like my mom's age, and she was just so wonderful. Um, and I remember like talking to her about, whatever relationship I was in at the time. And, I was like, well, I'm worried about this, and I questioned that and this and that. And I remember, this woman had been happily married for, 40 years or something. And she said to me, she's just like, Sam, if I sat down and asked myself all these questions about my husband, I don't think I'd like him anymore. So it was just kind of like, this idea that, maybe also part of my need to figure stuff out is this tendency of mine to obsess about stuff, to feel like there is a right answer, to feel like there is a black and white, yes or no, right or wrong situation when it's not.
Yeah, or even in the past. I mean, I don't know about you, but I spent a really long time trying to figure out what went wrong between blank, and me. Like, just like, I know there's an answer, and it's between his experience and mine, and I just need to figure out what it is.
Right. Yeah.
And a big part of, that process that I started, I don't know, 6 months ago, 7 months ago, was just being like, you know what? You're never going to have these answers.
Yeah.
Like, because you're one person involved in part of the equation.
Right.
And so to look at life that way too, of just, you know what, maybe things don't have to make sense. Maybe there's no answer. It kind of reminds me, I don't know if you watch The Good Place, but I just have been going, I've just been going through my second rewatch, and I am in the last season, which is kind of about that, like that maybe there's no answer. And I don't know, it's something that I've been thinking a lot about. You have these ideas about what you want your life to look like, and the process of just accepting that maybe you just have to go along for the ride.
Right.
I don't know. It's a scary thought for me, who again always thinks that like there is an answer, and I just have to work hard enough to find it.
Yes.
But what do you do, I guess, to kind of, when you get into those modes, what are those things that you do to kind of ground yourself and remind yourself that, you need to let go sometimes?
It's something that I feel like is such a work in progress for me, but I know that it is extremely helpful to, if I'm kind of ruminating, obsessing about whatever relationship I'm having, to, to talk to the person, like not necessarily to let them know all the crazy things that are going on in my head, because sometimes it's a lot, but more just like talking to whoever it is allows me to ground myself in the reality of, yes, here's this person here. I like this person. This person is not a black and white math equation.
Right. Right.
Sort of, I guess just getting into the moment, and just getting out of my head, right? Reminding myself, oh, okay, yeah, like I enjoy being with this person, this is going well, it's my head that is causing me to, second guess everything. And, I know my head well. My head gets in my way a lot. And yeah, so I guess really just shifting, doing something that gets me out of my head. So yeah, talking to people can do that. Exercise does that, which is,
ugh, I hate that answer.
Reason. I know, me too. I hate it so bad. But it's like really, like recently I've started to get to the point where it's like, okay, I really need to exercise regularly. Like not because I want, to get ready for a bikini or any of those like disgusting like 2002 magazine headlines, but because I'm like sometimes a bit of a mess in my own head, and I get stuck there, and so that is something that kind of is a good way out. Also theater is a very good way out for me. Coming around full circle, don't miss Bennet Christmas at Pemberley. but like the just interacting with everybody on stage and getting to create this little world that does fit very nicely into a box,
That's
like
true.
that's something that I think is, also kind of gets me out of the spirals and
Well, you get
helps
to
me.
play another
Yeah,
person, get into another
exactly.
person's headspace. That's always helpful
Right.
too.
Right.
Yeah,
Because I mean,
it's a lot.
I'm exhausting, like
It's like, whew, slip into some other shoes for a couple hours. I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
Well, so I've been doing a lot of thinking about values, and it's funny because you've actually used the word value a couple
Mhm.
times in this conversation.
Mhm.
From these experiences, and not just romantic relationships, but like friendships, relationships with family, relationships at work, etc. As someone who I clicked with, immediately, and
Yes.
as a fellow Taurus, what are
Mhm.
some of your values that you value for yourself and in the people close to you? Because I suspect that we probably have a lot in common.
Yeah. Yeah. I value treating people the way I want to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I value being kind to people. I value assuming good intentions. I value humor and silliness. And I guess I just really value just honesty, because we both know that there's those times when we have to have hard conversations with people. And yes, it's difficult. It's difficult to tell somebody, hey, I'm upset with you in this way, or to have somebody tell you that. But it's so much worse if you just push it down, or if this other person just pushes it down. And there's absolutely no way to come out of that okay on the other side, I don't think.
No.
So those are the big ones for me, I
Yeah.
think.
Those are similar. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've just realized that like direct communication,
Mhm.
the desire to connect, integrity, conviction, accountability. These are all things that I've been like, oh, I didn't realize how much these meant to me, but they do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess since New Year's Eve is tomorrow, this episode is airing the day before New Year's Eve. I almost said Christmas Eve. Oof. Um,
New Year's Eve.
New Year's Eve. What do you think about resolutions? Is it something that you do? I mean, I know that we just joked about bikini bodies, and I know that a lot of people's resolutions have to do
I
with
know.
physical stuff.
Mhm.
So I think that there's been a trend recently of people being like, I don't know about resolutions.
Yeah.
But like what are your thoughts about resolutions? Do you have any for 2023? I figured we could just like kind of talk about goals going forward and the things that we're looking forward to, and just kind of, we just did a lot of reflecting and looking backward, right?
Yes.
Which is a part of both of our personalities and something that I really value.
Yes.
But it is equally important to be able to look forward. So I figured we could take the last like 10 minutes or so to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never been a huge resolutions person. I don't know what it is, just something about, I'm like, okay, well, if I want to do something, I'm going to do it, whether or not it's, I set this resolution, January
Sure.
1st or whatever. But I am definitely becoming more of, an intentions person, which I guess is pretty similar. So I think, one of the big intentions that I really want to set going into 2023. Oh my gosh, I don't know how it's possible.
I know.
It's like, what?
It was just 2019, I swear to
Right?
God.
Like, well, it was just 2009. Like, I don't know what happened. But one big intention that I want to set is just to continue speaking up for myself, speaking up
Mhm.
for what I want, regardless of whether it pleases the person that I am currently with, whether that is, friendship, romantic relationship, whatever relationship. Like, that's something that is, I think, so important for me to do, because it's something that I ignored for so long. I just kind of tried to, you know, push that down in order, as we said, to keep the peace, to, have things be pleasant, whatever. And I've been doing pretty good with that the past year. But I really want to continue being very intentional about that. Is just sort of being, I guess, really just being more honest with myself,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Because it's something that for the longest time I just didn't even realize I wasn't doing, because I was so focused on other people and their experiences and their happiness and their
And how you could meet
peace.
their needs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. It's
So,
funny too, because
yeah.
I don't really do resolutions so much as I pick words.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my words for 2023 is intention.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's just
Nice. I
like
like it.
leading with intention, being more intentional about my relationships, the people that I'm spending my time with, how I spend my time,
Yeah.
etc. So again, that's kind of the same thing, just being more aware.
Yes. Yes. Being more aware of what it is that I actually want and making sure that, you know, that gets just as much attention as, me trying to make other people happy and give them what they want.
Right. Right. And I mean, I always find too that I kind of have two New Years. I do spend, January 1st, that's a new year, but if you think about it, and maybe this is my like astrological woo side coming out, my birthday is like and it helps too that my birthday is about 6 months into the year.
Yeah. Mhm.
It's at the very end of May. So
Same. Yeah.
yeah. And so, my birthday for me has always been it's my own personal, because New Year is like, okay, but that's not the exact amount of time that you've been on Earth. Your birthday is like
Very true.
actually a new year,
That's
right?
like your new year. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like your personal new year. So I always kind of set, some resolution type things, and then I revisit them and revamp them or set new ones entirely when my birthday comes around.
I like that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of like, why are we setting things once a year when, we're ever growing and ever evolving, as previously discussed?
Yeah.
So, well, what else? What are some things that you're looking forward to in the new year? Some, whether it be like work related or theater related.
Oh my gosh. I am so looking forward to our show in the new year because oh my gosh, it is getting close now. It's like
so
what,
close.
2 weeks?
2 weeks.
About.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
2 weeks as of the airing of this episode.
That's a little scary considering that we have this like longer break.
I know. Yeah.
Due to the holidays, but we'll be fine. I'm super excited for that because it's been such a fun experience because I like I don't find that like I meet people that I click with that often anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really do feel that way about you that that we just get along so well and that's like so incredibly nice for me to have because I feel like I can just be open and talk to you and have fun and be myself, which is hard for me.
I get that.
As I've been saying over and over again, it's kind of hard. I'm like, who am I to quote Zoolander? So I'm really looking forward to that because the rest of the cast also is like super easy to get along with. Very just a nice group of people. So I'm very excited to be sort of spending the first little bulk of the new year there with all you guys.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be just a very a very soothing place to be for me.
I think so.
Honestly. So I'm very excited about that. I don't really know what my next theater thing is, but I'm always super excited for whatever's next in theater because I adore it. It's wonderful. And yeah, I'm excited for the rest of the school year. We're about halfway through. And I'm with the 8th graders, so we're gonna have a whole graduating to high school ceremony for them at the end of the year. I'm at an online school, so I don't see them most days like in person. So I'm excited about their little mini graduation because I'll get to see them and everything. And yeah, I'm just I'm just excited to keep going in, a positive direction, and just, as we said, being intentional about things, knowing, getting to know what it is that I do want better, because I ignored it for a really long time.
Yeah. Great answer, and a great way to end. Sam, thank you so much for visiting with me today. I'll see you Monday.
Yes, I'll see you Monday. I'm excited.
But thank you so much for your vulnerability and for sharing and being willing to share your story. I know it's not always the easiest thing to come out and talk about weak moments, but I am of the belief that, and one of the things that 2022 taught me is that is what strength is, like wholeheartedly. Yeah. So thank you so much for doing that. And everybody, Miss Bennet, Christmas at Pemberley opens 2 weeks from today at Old Academy Players up in East Falls, Philadelphia. Yes. So if you want to come say hi, I play Jane and Sam plays Lizzie.
Yes, and it's not at all traumatizing like most of my love. So
we're very funny.
Yes, it's very sweet, very, very nice.
Wholesome. It's wholesome. So
it's wholesome.
All right. Well, thank you, Sam, and thank you everybody for listening. You have been listening to Wine, Dine, and 69. I am your host, Rachel Dalton, and let's keep talking.